really prior to puberty. Okay, so when we talk about the lifespan perspective, some important things to keep in mind are that development is multi-directional. Over time, human characteristics change in every direction. In other words, it's not as if everything increases from the time that we're young to the time that we get older. Some things tend to go up, some things tend to go down. For instance, I just said one example of this using language might be that as we get older, our vocabulary increases. Everybody knows that. So that's an example of a characteristic that changes in the direction of increasing. But we also just said that, using language as an example, the ease at which we can learn a second language decreases the older we get. So that's a good example of this multi-directionality, because some things go up or increase and other things go down or decrease as we develop. We'll be talking throughout this course about several major theorists. Some of these theorists can be described as stage theorists, and that's because they had theories that we develop in stages. You can think of these as like steps, where you move from one step to another step to another step, and each step represents a different time period in development, that we pass through these different stages, and that each stage is distinct from one another. This is as opposed to a more continuous view of development, in which rather than passing through distinct stages, we just kind of progress gradually from one time point in development to another time point without there being any sharp demarcation between those time points. Another important aspect of the lifespan perspective is that development is multi-contextual. So contextual generally refers to the fact that the context or the surrounding factors, surrounding variables, also contribute to the way that a person develops. So the historical context is a very important context, particularly because of what's known as a cohort effect. So all persons born within a few years of one another are said to be part of a cohort. This is a group defined by the shared age of its members. As an example of the cohort effect, you can see in table 1.1 here, which is in the textbook, which first names for U.S. girls and boys were most popular in 1928, 1948, 1968, 1988, and 2008. And the fact that if you were born in one of these years, there was a different set of names that was most common for girls and boys reflects the fact that just by virtue of being born in one of these years here, there were certain names that were more likely that you were more likely to be named than others. And so, if you were born in 1928, you might be more likely to be named Mary, Betty, Dorothy, Helen, or Margaret. And that reflects a cohort effect. The fact that if you were born in a certain time period, others who were born in that same time period are likely to share certain experiences with one another that they won't share with people who were born in a different time period. So when you're another example that might be more relatable for a student is that, let's say you enter the college in the year 2012, and a new policy is instituted and the requirements for graduation change for anyone who enters after 2012. Well, that means that if you came in 2012, you and all the other people that came in 2012 have the same graduation requirements. And anyone who entered after 2012 will have a different set of requirements in order to graduate. So you will share some similarity with people who were entering in the same year as you, not because of your age, but simply because of the fact that you were you entered into the college in a certain year. So another goal of lifespan developmental psychologists is to try to separate out what are referred to as cohort effects from, again, age effects. Age effects being developmental changes that are a result of the specific age of an individual. Now, of course, socioeconomic status is a socioeconomic contextual factor that is highly influential in terms of the way that we develop. So a person's position in society as determined by their income, wealth, occupation, education, and place of residence, these factors collectively are often referred to as socioeconomic status. That is, people of a high socioeconomic status tend to share certain aspects of their income, wealth, occupations, education, etc. Whereas those with lower socioeconomic status, they tend to have different income levels, different occupations, different levels of education, etc. Development is multicultural. So culture refers to the patterns of behavior that are passed from one generation to the next. And Vygotsky, famous developmental psychologist that we'll be talking about, he was one of the first to describe the interaction between culture and education, and really highlighted the importance of culture as a factor in influencing the way that we develop. Also, ethnic group is sort of related to culture, but it's a distinct concept. Ethnic group generally refers to the people whose ancestors were born in the same region and who often share language, culture, and religion, but they don't necessarily share these factors. You could be born in the same region as someone, but be of a different religion. You could be born in the same region as someone and move out of that region and then be exposed to a very different culture or a different language. So they're often similar, but not necessarily. Development is multidisciplinary. Psychology in general is becoming more multidisciplinary in nature, which means that distinct disciplines are important in terms of understanding the various influences on behavior. For instance, genetics and neuroscience are two newer disciplines in lifespan research. Because every trait, psychological as well as physical, is influenced by genes. As you can see in this graph here, this is an example of the way that neuroscience can help to illustrate certain patterns of behavior as measured by convictions for violent offenses. And here the neuroscience, this low MAOA activity, that's basically just a measure of levels of a neurotransmitter called serotonin that actually interacts with an environmental factor, specifically individuals who were either not maltreated, experienced probable maltreatment, or severe maltreatment. And so it's interesting to note that if individuals had low MAOA activity and they were severely maltreated, they were at a much greater risk of being convicted for violent offenses than individuals who were high in MAOA activity. And MAOA, it's not that important at this point, it stands for monoamine oxidase, which is an enzyme that breaks down monoamines, of which serotonin is one type of monoamine. Development is plastic. So human